Sam and Mike, both of you spend a ton of time with public fleets. You're on the front lines working with your clients. You guys are both fleet Hall of Famers. You've been in the industry forever, well respected. And we are just thankful for this time to be able to get together with both of you and really get your feedback on what you're hearing out there from customers that you're consulting with, from public fleet managers that you're engaging with while you're out there on the road face to face. So just kind of kicking this off, just want to get your perspective on what are some of those top concerns that you're seeing with public fleet managers and public fleets as you're out and about nowadays?
Well, thank you, Eric and Mike. What we're seeing right now, one of the very first questions we ask, the group that we're talking with is, what are the things that are keeping you up at night? What's the sore spots right now? What's your challenges? And a lot of it comes back to the things we've heard in the past. Protecting their fleet replacement fund is one. Shortage of technicians. Looking at their staff, evaluating their staff, and seeing in the next 5 years they could lose 50% of their staff to retirements is really a worrisome thing right now. And it's always budget. Budget just is coming up more and more. They're talking, what the cost of, legacy funds, with the cost of insurances, holidays, sick time, all that's really bothering them.
Mike, what about you?
I agree, Sam. And first off, it's been a long time since I've been able to work with Sam here. So it's a pleasure to work with him. And you again, Eric, I love working with you. I've worked with you guys for a long time. So it's great to be here. I really think, what aren't they worried about? What shouldn't they be worried about?
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a very tumultuous time right now because there's no clear set strategy for the industry. Everything seems to be in flux. So, in the days of setting up a 4 or 5 year project plan, those days are gone. You can't think that far out because things change too fast. So what shouldn't fleet managers be talking about? Now, Sam hit on a bunch of good stuff. That's the basic stuff. That's, foundational fleet management. We're getting proactive these days, and there's more to it now. There's a lot of things that 5 years ago we didn't worry about. Well, now you got to worry about those too. So, I can think of a whole host of things to talk about. We could spend all afternoon on this topic right here, but we just, what shouldn't they be worried about right now?
Is there anything that stands out that maybe, let's call it 5-7 years ago, wasn't a top concern that you see as more of an emerging trend coming? We're now well post-pandemic. What has changed that's really become an emerging trend that you hear as a common thread with public fleet managers as a concern?
I'll take a stab at this. I think a lot of it, the fleet managers trying to work with their upper management, with the fleet manager, the city managers, the city council, where they're getting different avenues to go down. A few years ago, it was nothing but, you got to buy EVs, we got to make this thing, global warming is really hurting us. We want to bring the carbon footprint down. We want this. And then when you had the manufacturers, the big 3 or 4 or 5 or 7, whatever they're out there right now, telling you, well, we're ceasing our EV production, or we're shutting down the EV production. And now you have EVs in the field. So there's a problem there. I mean, we got EVs. Now they're talking about, discontinuing some of these EVs, going back to, hybrid issues, hybrid cars. So now you're kind of changing directions again. Just as you get tooled up to do EVs, now you're going back with hybrids. So there's a big change right now. And with this, again, going back to staffing, with the fleet managers you may have in place right now with years and years of experience in dealing with these issues, they're looking at it and saying, maybe this is a good time to retire. Maybe it's time for me to retire and let somebody else deal with this. And, every city manager, every city council and mayor, county executives are all looking at the bottom line. What's it really costing us to keep this operation going? Is there something that, our insourcing or outsourcing our operation maybe an option now? So there's some threats out there. And with the cost of parts going up, the cost of, the fluctuating fuel prices going up, it's all working on a fleet manager's brain right now, and it's got his desk full of papers right now.
Yeah.
His or hers desk full of papers.
And I agree with you, Sam. In order to add to what you're saying, you know, transparency, when you talk about government fleets, transparency has really accelerated over the past 5-6 years, especially since the COVID era, and we're through that now. And what that's done is fleet directors, managers, superintendents, who's ever running the fleet in whatever particular jurisdiction you're in, they now have to respond much quicker than you used to do 4 or 5 years ago. And this is where technology is playing into that, and fleets just, they can't seem to get modern technology in place fast enough to meet some of those challenges. And this is it's not only the public fleets. I see this in the commercial side as well. They just can't do it. There's budget constraints, like you said, or a whole host of different challenges that you have to do. But transparency and responding to all those requests for information is really a challenge for these fleet directors and managers today. And I know that I work with them, and we try to work solutions as best as we can. But I think that your more proactive fleets and your more well-run fleets realistically have a better handle on the technology available that they're using and how reactive they can be to answer some of those questions.
Yes, good, very good point. Well taken there, Mike. Right on spot on.
When we're talking a lot about technology, we talk about kind of the operational side of things and a lot of these challenges, but both of you are still known as leaders in the industry. You were leaders in the industry when you were actively managing a fleet as well. And we know many of these fleet managers came up the technician route, or they served in the armed services, which is just an awesome pathway into fleet management for many. But then they come into fleet management and they're thrust into a role. So a lot of them haven't had a lot of mentorship potentially. I want to talk a little bit about the leadership side. Do you think it really is different than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, as far as the leadership skills that these people need? Let's talk a little bit about that. Are there different types of leadership skills that you think a fleet manager needs nowadays? And how do we fill that gap a little bit, where people are coming in who maybe haven't had that experience in the past, and now they're being called on to lead? How do they get there?
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. And foundational fleet management really hasn't changed. You still have to do those certain things, that are foundational. You scheduling, and you've got to have an asset plan, and you've got to do specifications, and you've got to, get your people involved, and you've got to know how to manage all those areas. So that really hasn't changed a lot. We've just thrown a lot more on their plate on how to do that. So people, like you say, they're coming out of the military, they're coming up through the ranks, and they're doing that. And they get a little bit of mentorship, but they need a lot of training in those areas. One of the areas I see that gets overlooked a lot is, there are shortages in good, solid fleet managers these days. There's open positions everywhere, and a lot of times you find a manager from procurement or operations or finance, or somebody comes in and takes over the fleet. Well, he's got a good sense of managing a lot of different areas, but he or she, whoever that might be, is really not fully competent in some of that foundational stuff that you got to know, where, somebody that comes up from the floor really knows how that floor operates, and they can do that. So this is an area where I think people need to concentrate on. If they don't know the foundational fleet management, they need to either get into it or they need to surround themselves with people who are good at it, and they need to listen to them, because I see a lot of fleets get lost in that area right there. And
Yeah.
they call me up, hey, we're down here and we're this far off. And, oh, well, your problem was way back here 2 years ago. This is
Right.
where you made this change. And because they missed on some of the foundational stuff and they didn't catch it till now. So I see those are an area that a real concentration that fleet directors, managers, and all that this day and age really need to understand that foundational fleet management.
Yes, I would definitely agree with everything Mike said. You know, I think a lot of it is everybody gets caught up in the fleet managers today they get caught up in their jobs. Their desks are loaded with work to do. And when it comes to training, they sometimes they will attend to training, but they need to start stepping back and saying, okay, I'm going to be here 2 more years or 3 more years. I need to bring Mike with me and Joe with me to this training because this is fleet management training. There's so many different things. When we give training and we talk to people on during the breaks and things and ask them how things are going. Goes, you folks, I'm drinking from a fire hose right now, listening to you folks. And you watch, they have 4 or 5 sheets of paper of notes. And I said, well, what did you do before? He goes, well, I was a deputy clerk for the city. The deputy clerk is now the fleet manager because they couldn't find anyone that they could fit into that role that they thought they could depend on. But it's just not running a fleet. It's like Mike was saying, running the fleet, the foundation is very important. But now fleet managers are being called upon, obviously, with millions and millions of dollars in their budgets moving forward. You have city hall, you have city managers, you have the finance director. You have to know the lingo to talk to a finance director and the city manager. You have to know negotiating skills to make sure you can defend your budget in front of a city council. And I think that's where there's some real experience needed in some of these people. They're excellent wrenches on the floor. He or she are excellent wrenches. But when it comes down to negotiating with people, talking contracts, writing bid specifications, awarding specifications, writing memos to city council, dealing with city council and all the other departments you're dealing with, there's a little bit of a learning curve there they're going to have to catch up on real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we all know this. You have to get involved in the community of public fleet. I mean, I've worked in a lot of different B2B communities and even within fleet in general. Public fleet is the most warm and welcoming community that you can ever join. And so many just kind of make that mistake of thinking they're on an island. You have to be at NAFA, you have to be at GFX, you have to go to the RTA type events or your FMIS, whether it's Asset Works, Faster RTA, or others, you have to go to their events and get to know people because that is where you are going to learn. And then, ideally, you get involved in a local association as well, public fleet managers. And if you don't have one in your area, you should start one because the difference between success and failure that I've seen have been the people who take that extra step. And it's a small portion of the public fleet community that actually takes advantage of that kind of networking and connections. But you just have access to minds who have been there and done that. So agree with both of you on that. You touched on technician recruitment a little bit and retention. It seems like we've been talking about this for almost 30 years now. And I'm sure before I was involved, first GFX, this was one of the topics we were talking about. So just wondering, I mean, is the issue still the same kind of competitive environment out there where you're talking about service shops and dealerships? Has any of that dynamic changed from what you're seeing? And really ultimately want to understand if the challenge is a slightly different flavor or pretty much the same we've seen the last 2 decades. And then anyone that you're hearing doing some unique things that's actually working, both on the recruitment and the retention side.
Well, I'll start this one, Mike. I think it's so very important to just stay in touch with your surrounding communities and counties and city municipal fleets, even your dealerships, to see what they're doing, what their pay scale is like, what their benefit package is like, how are they recruiting, and you can't recruit. Union shops are different from non-union shops. You can have a little bit more flexibility with how much you can pay these people. Union shops, you're a little bit, restricted on that because you have to go by what the contract says. But I think it's really important to stay in touch with municipalities around you, with county facilities around you, to see what they're paying, what their benefits package is like, and then just don't sit on that information. You need to march upstairs to HR and to the city manager's office to say, we have a problem here. We need to get this in the right area because we're paying $2 less an hour than these other municipalities are paying, and their benefit packages matching ours, plus it excels in a few places. If we want to attract the best, we have to have the best. So I think it's a lot to do with that. Plus, just stay in contact with them. Don't just tell them that and let it go. Next time there's a posting come up for an opening you have to fill, get involved with that opening. Get involved with that posting before it goes out. Make sure it looks right. All the information you need is on there. Is it a day shift, an afternoon shift? Is there a shift premium? Is there an ASE premium if you're ASE certified? Put all that out there. And if you can, what we did years ago, and it worked fantastically for us, we made a video of our operation, a video of what when you come to work for the city of Troy, what you're going to have at your fingertips. You have a fuel management program. You have a fleet management program. You have a well modernized shop. You have an excellent parts room. You have excellent people to work with. You do a complete video of your operation. Your vehicle replacement program is up to speed. Things like that. That's going to attract the people. And what really attracts them, it's a team effort. Everybody works as a team. There's not a lot of backstabbing going on. We're an award-winning team. We've won awards in the past for our type of operation. That attracts new technicians. That attracts new talent.
That's great, Mike.
I agree with that, Sam. You have to have a really good compensation package, and you have to be competitive within your region. What I really find interesting is when I go into a region and look around and I see fleets that are saying they have a vacancy rate at 10% or 15% or whatever that might be, and somebody just down the street within the same regional area, they're 100% fully staffed, ready to go, no problem at all getting people on board. Those are the ones I look at. What are you doing that's different over here? And most often, they're not really doing anything different. It's simply the quality of what they're working with. Could be the facilities, brand new facilities, or, they've got, they're an award-winning fleet. People and recruitments these days and potential hires, they're going to research who you are before they sign on the dotted line, and they're not gonna work for somebody that's everything's old and antiquated and budget fighting and this and that. They're gonna say, well, I'd rather go over here because this seems to be more well run and it's more modernized and they've got a real solid program. Sam, you said you've really got to put it out there. This is what we're doing. Yeah. But I look at those fleets that are really not having a hard time. And it's very interesting to see the contrast. Sometimes, like you say, it's a union thing or, a bargaining agreement where, okay, it's not going to be renegotiated for a couple of years. And you just have to live through that. But there's opportunities to fix that. But a lot of times it's the recognition in those things that you get with a more modernized, better run fleet. And this is what I see when I see that. In these particular areas.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
One quick thing also is, I think a lot of municipal fleets fall down on the recruitment. They may have an excellent person that Mike interviewed with me, and I really liked Mike's interview. I thought he was great, but sometimes it takes City Hall or county government 6 weeks or 8 weeks to get back to Mike and say, hey, Mike, by the way, would you go for a physical? We want to hire you. So Mike says, well, I've been working the last 6 weeks for so-and-so. You have to have HR on your side on this point, and purchasing or personnel on your side, HR on your side, and have them ready to hand the person an application to go get a physical because he's one of your finalists. you cannot wait because this person's interviewing for you. There's 10 other people in line waiting for this person. And that's the biggest problem. And I think once you hire the individual, I really feel fleet managers kind of fall down in this part. Not all, some. They stay in their office a little bit too much. They need to get out on the floor and be a little, kind of open communication with these individuals. Not only the ones you just hired, but the whole staff. Make them feel as part of the team, and that you have an open door policy. They can come in and talk to you if there's an issue out there, and you'd be surprised what you'll learn from that. You're welcoming them to your operation. And I always try to create a family operation type thing, like they're my extended family more or less, because I spent, sometimes some people are playing 40% of their life with these people,
Right.
and working there with them, seeing them every day.
I think that's all really great advice. I'm gonna throw this out at you in a different way, and then we'll move on. But I would love each of you. Say you run into someone, typical elevator pitch. Take compensation and say all things fair compensation wise. If they're considering the private sector versus working in a public fleet, from a technician standpoint, each of you give me like your 20, 30-second elevator pitch, really short and concise, of why you think public fleet could be a really good future for them.
Well,
Mike, you
I
want
think
to?
public fleet, when you compare the two, public and private or commercial, your pitch has to be for the long haul. In the commercial fleets, you can probably make more money, salary, hourly, whatever the case may be, but you're really not going to get a good solid benefit package, and you're not going to have those retirement opportunities, and a lot of times you're not going to have opportunities to increase, to move up the chain or to change career path where you will in government. So you have a lot more open opportunity there in the government sector versus the private sector. And to be honest with you, the salaries these days, when you get into journeyman level type technicians and quality people, they're not that much different.
Good. That's great. And I know in this instant gratification world, it's sometimes hard to convey that, but I think that's part of selling them on the truth of the longer game, or that midterm game where it can be a better home. Sam, what do you got?
I think those are excellent points, and I think you can. A lot of these people that we lured away from the private sector they were tired of the roller coaster ride with their paychecks. Some of them were working flat rate. When times are good, you make money, but when times get lean, now you're bringing 20 hours a week home instead of 40 hours a week home.
Right.
We're going to tell them you're going to get a 40-hour paycheck here. You also have benefits that are going to, be strong benefits. You have a modern operation to work for. We are not going to close our doors and move to a different town or a different state. We're going to be right here. We're not moving. We're staying here. And
Yeah.
the benefit package you have is a strong benefit package, and we're here to protect you. We also have a strong workers' comp package. We have a dental package, and this dental package will cover yourself, your spouse, your kids. So, and your retirement packages, we have the 401s, and we have a 457 where you can put additional funding away. And we're here to assist you.
Perfect. That's great. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. Both of you guys have been on site quite a bit. And when you first walk into a facility and an operation, I'm sure there's times where you're pleasantly surprised, and there's times where you have that opposite feel. So want to get an idea, when you first walk into an operation, what are some of the telltale signs when you can tell that it's a very reactive shop, a reactive operation versus proactive, meaning they're well run versus maybe not well run, and you haven't even necessarily talked to anyone yet. Just visually, when you're walking in, what are some of those signs that you see that are telltales of proactive versus reactive operations?
Want me to go, Mike?
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, a lot of the times, over the last 10 years, we walk in and they know we're coming, right? They know we're coming in to, take a look. And when we walk into a shop and we're stepping over creepers and we're stepping into, over floor dry and kicking floor dry aside, and seeing technicians that are not dressed in even a uniform. They're dressed in just regular jeans and a t-shirt. Workbenches are a mess. The facility is old and dirty, and the vehicles they're working on are beyond their age. Let's just put. But one of my top points are I walk into the parts room. The parts room is going to tell me if they're a reactive or a proactive type thing. If I see, a very small parts room with minimal stock, and it's a mess what they have. There's parts all over the floor. There's, things just, parts on the shelf. They have grease marks all over them. No real identification. No fleet management program. It's going to tell me a story right there. It's going to tell me what I really need to look at here, and it's going to lead to a reactive shop, not a proactive shop, because they just don't have the modernization of a shop. They don't have the lift they need. They don't have the tools they need or the parts they need to repair the vehicles they have. So everything's going to be reactive, and it's going to show in their downtime as well. And they're people, when we interview them, that's the first thing that's going to come up as well.
Yeah. Mike, anything to add?
I agree with all that. When I walk into a new client or somebody that I'm potentially going to work for, I look at organization. You can just look around and see how things are arranged. You haven't even been inside yet. Look at the yard. What kind of organization's going on out in the yard? Because that'll tell you if everything's neat, placed and straight and kind of in a particular place. It's going to be a lot easier for people to go find it. They know where it's at. They're not hunting the yard down. And then even moving in closer, look for clutter. Look for wayfinding signage. Where is everything? These are some of the real small, simple things that I'll look for. I mean, when I go into a new client and it's my first day there, I have a set of questions that I'm going to ask everybody, and they're geared for particular areas because that's going to point me on what I should be looking at first. But as you're walking in and you're looking around, like Sam says, organization, is everything neat and tidy? I look at also the modernization of the equipment that they have. What are they doing when you're just looking at it? Do you have sedans mixed in with dump trucks and bulldozers, or is there kind of a separate area? Because, sedans and light trucks only need a certain size area, and they need certain types of things, where heavy equipment, construction, big trucks, those things, they need different type of stuff. So, when you look at that organization, that's going to tell you a lot about scheduling and how things are scheduled. And then when it comes right down to it, a well-run shop, 70% scheduled, 30% unscheduled. And to me, unscheduled means crisis management. And that organization is going to tell you the level of crisis management right there. Like Sam says, the parts room, you got stuff stacked up in all the corners over here, or do you have bins outside where, okay, this is where it's at, technician knows right where to go get it, or whatever. And it transfers up into the office area too. The old adage is, you're going to hire a good technician, go look at his toolbox. If his wrenches and screwdrivers and all that are neat and organized and everything's good, he's probably a lot more efficient than somebody who just throws it in the drawer and closes the door. Same thing with shop.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, for fleets that are looking to improve, we know there's so many awards out there, and we've all been involved in awards over the years, whether it's building them or judging on them, or you both winning a lot of them. So when we're looking at the 100 best, when we're looking at leading fleets, or looking at Fleet Manager of the Year type awards in the space, we've always gotten a lot of questions. I've always gotten a lot of questions. Well, what does it take to win? How do I stand out? It seems like a lot of us are doing similar things. Nowadays, when you're looking at how a fleet can stand out when they're looking at getting recognition, because we know what that can bring to an operation, whether it's more funds or even career paths, whatever it may be, for an operation or a person, what stands out nowadays? Like, what are some of the new things that are coming up that people can be implementing that could help them stand out when they're looking for getting recognition?
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, Mike. Well, you hit a lot of topics there, Eric. You hit a lot of important points. I think a lot of it has to do from the top down, because top down from the fleet management down to the entry level technician. It comes down. I've read many, many, many of those applications in the past, and a lot of them, I look at and I say, well, this person must be walking on water, because I don't know how that happened, but he's got to be doing something right. But I think it has to be accurate. You have to have a fleet management program, a fuel management program that can accurately track your vehicle usage and your fuel usage. Um, return on investment is important to me, because your higher ups look at that all the time. You're asking for $500,000 to implement a certain type of program. Well, they want to see what it's done for you. So you come to your awards program, you should be able to show them that by implementing this new fleet management program, we've accurately tracking our vehicles now. We're right sizing our fleet. How are we right sizing our fleet? We're looking at utilization of our fleet. We're looking at our technicians now are turning a lot of great wrench turning hours, a lot less indirect, more direct hours we're getting from our technicians, because we're making things, I don't want to say easier for them, but more available to them so they can do this. We're keeping our vehicle availability. We're into 85 to 95% availability. Some are at 97% availability, because it's being tracked by their fleet management programs, and it's letting them know they need to step it up when they need to step it up. What kind of comebacks are they having? When they do have comebacks, they're sending technicians to schooling. They're doing schooling with these technicians. They're trying to improve their skills. But I think those are all return on investments, where you're spending capital dollars and you're spending training dollars to make your operation better. That's what I like to see in them. And I don't want to see the same old things. We bought X amount of vehicles this year. Our fleet replacement program is suffering this year. What are you doing to improve it? I want to know. What are you doing? Are you negotiating with your city council and your mayors and your finance director why we need to get rid of these vehicles? Because our expensive fleet management program that you gave us money to operate or buy told us at 50% it needs to go, because it's going to cost us more money to maintain this, and we're going to get less on a return. That's what I'm saying. You have to have the whole picture. And a lot of fleet managers need to blow their horn more on these things too. Just put it out there. Ask, and my best thing was, I always used to ask our employees and my staff, what big accomplishments did we have this year? And they would tell me what really meant to them as well, what we did that helped them do a better job. So,
yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
those are all good points, Sam. And one of the things, Eric, as Sam alluded to, you hit on a lot of points there. And when it comes to these awards, they're a little bit different. You have agency awards where you're submitting top 100 best fleets, leading fleets, Fleet Masters Award, whatever they are out there. And they're all a little bit different. I think everybody should compete in all of them. But you're submitting as the team. So you need a team submission. And one of the things that you really need to make sure you relay, if you do that, is you have to articulate that so that whoever's reading that, whether it be a judge for the contest or your boss or the city council or whoever, because they should all see it, that you really have your finger on the pulse of your operation and you have been managing it very well, hitting in all those little areas. So you want to do that. And make sure you're covering all that. Make sure other people read it, because it's a team recognition and they're all involved. So you want to have that. When it comes to individual awards, Fleet Manager of the Year, Technician of the Year, Fleet Professional of the Year, all those things, Fleet Master, those are more geared for individual recognition. And a lot of times, that nomination is very important, even if you're not the successful person. Just the nomination, or even better, becoming a finalist, because all these different awards means that you're getting sometimes third and fourth party reviews of your operation. So This is where it becomes important when you go to the city council or the county commission or the executive branch, the C-suites. They understand somebody else is reading your data and they're reviewing it. And so it should be very accurate. It should be concentrated on your agency only. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Therefore, everybody knows that's the case. So it becomes factual and real. It gives you credibility. So when you need something, you need Sam's $500,000 for a project, you've got the credibility to go get it, or your team does. This is where that's very important. And a lot of fleets don't do that. They don't believe in that philosophy. And it's a shame because I know it worked very well for me for years and years and years. That's why I always participated every year, and these things year after year, they become a roadmap. This is where we were 5 years ago, and this is the direction we're pointed in. Well, is that the direction we want to go in, or do we make some adjustments and make that change? So it really gives you that roadmap to be more proactive in the future. And that's what, again, brings more credibility to your organization, becomes easier to get that funding, easier to get those technicians, easier to get that salary bump and increase, whatever you may be looking for to keep things going.
That's great. Yeah, that's super helpful. Um, let's do one last question because we've had a really good conversation here, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share this knowledge. Want to get, I guess, a little bit personal now. So this is war story time, but we're going to frame it up in you guys learned some hard lessons, I'm sure, coming up through the ranks. And so I want you to pick out one, which I know can be really difficult because I'm sure there's a variety there that you could pick from. But think about an up and coming fleet manager and what they're facing right now. And if you have one mistake or lesson you learned the hard way that you could save them from having to learn the hard way by sharing your story a little bit, what story comes top of mind is like the number one hard lesson you learned that you wish someone had been able to tell you about ahead of time that you have a chance to warn someone about? Mike, you get to go first this time, I think. Say,
I'll take the challenging one here, throw myself under the bus.
That's right.
I think one of the toughest things back as a young coming up and coming supervisor manager was just to learn the art of communication. You really have to know, and I think Sam touched on this a little earlier, you really have to know how to communicate across all types of different planes. You've got to have, I actually wrote an article on this a few years ago. You have to have multi-level cross-functional communication skills, meaning you have to be able to talk to your peers. You have to be able to talk to your team at all different levels. You have to be able to communicate with all different types of levels above you, your suppliers. There's so many different aspects and how to do that. Each one is a little different. And I know that early on I struggled and I created some of my own adversarial problems.
Are we going to get the personal story here, Mike, or are we going to talk in kind of just broad terms?
I really assumed that they knew this and they didn't, and I didn't articulate myself enough, and here we are in this quandary. And sometimes those are hard to undo, so you really have to work on that. And communication, I think, is key to success. And I know, like we talked about earlier, you've got a lot of people coming in from different areas of the organization: finance, procurement, operations, facilities, wherever they're coming from. And maybe, they have some lingo stuff they got to work on, or, it's not my way or the highway. We've got to work on this. And, when it talks about applying for these awards, customer satisfaction is the best way to figure out if you've got good communication, because customer satisfaction is the fastest way to get yourself replaced. If it's not a good number, you're not in a good spot. So, but I think communication is key. Really work on that. You have to be open, and it's not just about listening, it's about hearing what they're saying. A lot of people hear and they're not really listening right. So communication is key.
Well, that was good, Mike. You walked that line perfectly. So I have to rephrase for you, Sam. I need like names, dates, and specific times on your story here. So just kidding, just kidding. What do you got?
Well, I came out of I graduated from a very, very excellent, school on fleet management technician, training. And I walked in, I was an intern with the city of Troy from the get-go. I was hired as an intern, but I was still going to school. They had an opening when I graduated. They hired me. And I was pretty much convinced that I was not going to make a career at the city of Troy because of what I saw going on the shop floor. I saw, work that was going on that, it just didn't seem right to me. People that, people were doing their work, but they, without naming names, obviously they could have done a better job. It's from the management all the way down. And when there was an opportunity, I was promoted from a service entry job to a technician, from a technician to a heavy tech to a leader to supervisor. Then, unfortunately, our fleet manager passed away, of a heart attack. Well, they put an opening up, an application out there for his position. And I told my wife, I said, I don't know, that position. I watched that guy. He got his backside chewed quite often by all the departments and everything else. And I said, I don't want to end up like him, having a heart attack or something.
Mhm.
I was 27 years old. So my wife said, well, and I don't want to hear you complaining anymore about where you're working. If you can change it, change it. So I put my application in, went through the interview program, and was selected as the fleet manager. Back then it was a fleet superintendent. Um, Anyways, first day on the job, I was convinced that we had to change our image. We had to change our image because the fleet didn't have a good image. No one really respected the fleet operation in the whole city. I will say that openly, and I'm not happy about it, but they didn't. And so we had to come out. So I went out. My very first thing was I talked with the staff. I talked with all the departments that we worked for. They had 15 departments, we did work for. I told them things are going to change, but I need your help on this. And they all stepped forward and said, okay, it's a clean slate. Let's see what you can do. Because we were tired of bringing our equipment to what was called the black hole there. And it would sit there for sometimes a month before they would bring it in to work on it. So I said, well, that's going to change. And I got everybody on our side. We went out and signed contracts for parts. We started hiring some different technicians. Now, mind you, I was now the fleet superintendent. So I am over the supervisors that used to tell me what to do, right? So there's a little bit of a rub there. You know how that goes. Well, I kind of brought them into the office and had one-on-ones with them and told them that, things are going to change. We're not going to continue to do things the way they were done. Breaks will be 15-minute breaks. They're not going to be 20 minutes or 30-minute breaks. They're 15-minute breaks. Lunches will be 30 minutes because we have a product to produce here. And the citizens of our city depend on this operation for that product, for them to have their service they request, they need. And our departments depend on us to give them a quality product so they can do their jobs. So right there and then, that was a big turning point. That was a big thing to do. And one of the supervisors decided that he was going to retire because he was close to retirement anyways. And him and I got along great. He was a great supervisor, but he retired because I really think we were pushing our way into the computerized age, and he wasn't ready for that. But he was an
Right.
excellent supervisor. The other one was a very laid back supervisor and was, sometimes upset with me because his evaluations weren't the best. And I told him, these are your goals, and these are what we have to accomplish. And so it was very difficult. Now, do today's fleet managers coming into that situation, can they turn that around like that? Not without some good training, I don't think so. And buying in, having the other departments buy into your program, buy into your goal that you're going to make their jobs easier because you're going to give them a product that will work for them. That's my story.
That's great. Well, thank you both. hoping we can continue this conversation next time and kind of go into some other areas because this has been awesome. So thank you both for your time. And again, thank you to RoadFlex for supporting this and supporting these conversations like this with their Refueled brand. So I'll talk to you all next time. And again, appreciate it.
Thank you,
All
Eric.
right. Thanks, Eric.